Hello, good evening, Mr. Ikena. Good evening. Did I say good evening? Good afternoon, rather. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello, good afternoon. Please, if you can hear me, can you kindly just indicate by maybe an emoji or something, or you can send a message in the chat box. You don't have to unmute to speak. Okay. I want to assume that we can all hear me. But welcome to class. This is week 5 of the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship program for the FinTech industry class. And it's been I think one of the classes I really, really do enjoy on a personal level is the FinTech class because the discussions within the FinTech industries, our mentors do help us run through very, very practical things that, about what is going on within the FinTech space. And we get to hear and learn from them. We look forward to having an exciting time in class, even though right now we seem to be having very, very low participation. Please, I would like to kindly encourage for those that are in class, can we try to reach out to our co-mentees to try to get them to join in for the session so that we can have a full class. If we can do that, then I would really, really do appreciate. So like I said, not to waste any time, I would just do well to introduce the mentors that we're expecting in today's class. We don't have them yet here on call, but hopefully they will be joining us shortly. Our first mentor for today is the person of Mr. George Onyewuchi. Mr. George Onyewuchi, I wouldn't want to read his profile saying that, we've done that over time, subsequently throughout the course of the program. He has been a constant mentor from week one and down to this particular class. So there will be no need for me reading his profile. We're very well familiar with him. Another mentor that we have or that we expect in today's class is Mr. Max Ikombe. Mr. Max Ikombe is another wonderful mentor that has been with us in a couple of classes. I think in 2 classes already, and it has also been great hearing from him. Right. So please give me one moment. I'm trying to Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, Mr. Max is another wonderful mentor that so far has been, a very, very key and wonderful a key part to, our program so far. Sorry, I think we have one last mentor that, I don't have his slides here, his flyers here, and that is Mr. Peter Cole, right? Mr. Peter Cole too has been a mentor with us, I think, in one of our classes. He will be our third mentor for today. So sorry about the the wrong slides that I shared. So not to okay. So while we still wait for our mentors to join in, sorry for their delayed presence. Sorry for their delayed presence in class. But what I would just want us to do while we try to commence is for us to get to just have a little discussion as to how the program has been so far for us, right? While we just wait for the mentors to join in, we've confirmed that they will be joining us very soon. So would kindly crave your or beg your indulgence for you for us to exercise a little patience. So while we wait for them to join in, we would want to have just a little quick discussion about how the program has been so far for us. What are some of the key highlights that we've been able to pick from the mentorship in itself. So I will be going through just two mentees. We'll be taking that, and subsequently, if after we are done, they've not yet joined in, then we'll move straight to presentation. So please, the group presenters for class, please just be on standby after we are done with just having a little discussion, then we'll be taking presentations while we still wait for the mentors to join in. So starting out first, I think I would like to start with Itana. Please, if you can, unmute. I would just want you to just kindly let us know how the mentorship has been so far from you. What is something that has stood out so far overall for you over the course of the program?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud
Uh,
and clear.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Williams, for the opportunity. Thus far, the program has been very, very educating and enlightening, especially our mentors. They've been able to pass so many, knowledge on this aspect of fintech uh, to me personally. And a lot of stuff actually stood out for me, in the course of the program. Yeah, yeah. At least how to deal with you know fintechs companies that are just coming up, how as a mindset, the complexity and how to simplify some of these issues, and especially the regulation aspect. So as a professional, our role is always expanding and increasing, and with time we should also help these companies to grow. Most of them might not even know some of all these regulatory frameworks that they need, and it has been very enlightening in that aspect. you know Also how to um, help them with their business model. I think 2 weeks ago we did the business model canvas too, and I really, really benefited from that class. How to create value, how your value proposition is the core area. You need to also look at the commercial aspect of the fintech, and so it's been a class that I've learned so much, and I'm often learning more. And I'm actually looking forward to this class, because today's class are some very key salient points and questions that I really need to, get some answers to. So basically, personally, I've benefited so much from the class, and it has been a very good engagement, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that response. We'll just be asking one more person, and then I think we'll be starting with presentations. Sorry again for the delay from the mentors. Okay, before we take another person's, just a highlight on like a standout for what has been a standout for you from the program itself. I would like to remind you guys that earlier Mr. George talked about how that there's a project he's working on the crypto space in terms of a program he's setting up to get to more of an advisory program, right? That he is organizing to get people on board to know where to invest within the crypto space. What's the projections for blockchain and crypto may look like this year? So he discussed about that I think in the last class or two classes ago, right? And then he has sent us the link for that, and I have also dropped it in the group. So in case if you want to be a part of that and you have not yet registered, please you can kindly go through the group. You'll find it. I did the posting. I sent the link to the group yesterday, so you can always just register. I think it's coming up sometime within the month, right? I think that will be well after we are done with the mentorship section itself. So please, Mr. Oluwadamilola, your second person, what has been a key standout for you from the fintech class itself?
All right. Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you. Well, there have been you know, quite a few actually. I think the first is, I think it's refreshing how we have multiple speakers come and give varying insights. How I mean is, in place of one person just taking one topic, that is, the usual familiar Nigerian standard, we have two, three people taking taking the same topic. So what this has done for me is, it's giving me different perceptions, different perspectives, different levels of understanding, each unique to its own, in terms of individuality. Because say for instance now, that time when we took our artificial intelligence and what's it called, and data, and then I think there were women, female, we had female speakers, and one person came and said this, one person came and said, the another person came and said this different line of view. And even when we had data protection with what's it called, the really passionate Igbo man, where he explained how the NDPC came around, the whole idea of terms and consenting and principles and everything, really. I think I really, really, that stood out for me. And I think one thing that also stood out for me was passion. I mean, at first, in attending these lectures, I just imagined, oh, okay, it's just the regular, we're talking, we're listening. But I think one really underscored value, that one key takeaway actually is passion. These are people that are passionate about these topics. These are people that are actually interested. These are people who are actively making presentations because they hope. I think there's an undertone of a greater mission or greater good to the presentations, and not even just presentations, chips in general. So lots of speakers are very, they're very keen on quote and unquote imparting the next generation, on shaping the narrative for younger lawyers and generally just bridging the gap. And that really stood out for me, because it's one thing to speak out on the topic, it's one thing to hope people learn, and it's an entirely different thing to do it with nothing and the sole intention of just making things easier for the younger people. And I think that really stood out for me most. I think that's really laudable. I think if this were a physical event, and this is the pastor would be like, oh, let's hear for JIIPCC and our speakers, and everyone would have to give a hand and applaud and all those things. But I think that really was impressive. That was super awesome, because it's not often people are keen on making things easier for younger people. And this is not to ignore our older under members of the class. But it's not often we see those kind of things where people come and say, you know what, this is a thing, let's make it easier. More often than not, they're always all, yeah, it happened during my time. Yeah, and that's how it says, or oh, I did it, you do it. So, regular Nigerian cultural sentiments and all those things. But I think the passion of the speakers really made me understand that, and their ability to uh, you know, to navigate these topics with the Nigerian reality. Mr. George, I recall in one class where he said something that I found really profound, where he said, at the end of these days, these people are just founders of nothing, just being founder of nothing. And in terms of regulatory framework and I think financial technology and all these founders and startups and things, and he really demystified the whole title of founder, because at that moment in time, it was then I did realize that I was actually curious a bit too, towards why we have so many founders. It's as though people just came from the earth and the blue. And I was also curious, as to the whole funding this. But when he explained that, that really demystified it. That some startups aren't. It's not all this, this vast amount of startups you see. They're not entirely churning out money or just, it's not as if everybody's just going to one corner and just collecting 500 million or something and saying, oh yeah, let's have a business. Sometimes it could just be what it is. It is what it is. Oh wow, that's been a lot. I mean, there are a few more that does, but I think I'll just stop here. So yeah,
All right.
thank you to our speakers and the Gypsy team. Especially you, Dennis. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for the many praise and a big shout out to our mentors who, consistently show their passion in bringing informations that are industry standards and the industry standard and, them showing their passion in delivering those industry standard information to us and ensuring that we get every bit of it and trying to break it down within fractions that are going to be understandable and not just complex terms, not just using complex terminologies that are far beyond our reach. So a big shout out to, or a big thank you to the mentors and thank you to, Oluwadamilola and, Itana for those wonderful words that they shared. So we're supposed to go into the presentations, but I think we have Mr. Max on call. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We are happy to have you in today's session. Mr. George is still going to be running a little bit late today, so we'll take Mr. Max's presentation. If Mr. George is not yet in class, we'll take presentations from the mentees and subsequently receive Mr. George when he comes. So over our topic for today is IP protection um, for fintechs. For fintechs, Mr. Max, you're welcome, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for being in class again with us. We are happy to always have you around. Sir, we just want to hear from you in the next 20 minutes on your discussion for today. You're welcome, sir. Mr. Max, are you with us? Hello, Mr. Max. Okay. I would want to assume Mr. Max is maybe having challenges with his network, right? But he's currently on the call, so instead, I think we'll maybe take a role reverse. So let's have presentations first, and then we'll move over back to the mentors. Okay. Okay, so let's take a role reverse. Let's have presentations and then would, have the discussions from our mentors. Group one, if you're ready, we're ready for you. Group presenter, try to kindly share your slides. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. Let's try to make it as speedy as possible.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Adebayo.
So I'm presenting for group one.
All right.
I'm trying to share the slide.
All right, no problem. That's fine.
Is it reflecting now?
Your slides are sharing. It's up.
Okay, good afternoon. So this is a presentation on navigating the intellectual property landscape in fintech. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I think the slide right now should be showing the table of content.
It is.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just move ahead to the introduction. Okay, the fintech world is evolving at lightning speed, and we all know that, from a digital wallet and blockchain to AI-driven financial platform. But with this growth comes a very big question, which is, how do we protect the innovations we are building? That is where intellectual property, IP, becomes critical. And today I want to take us through the role the IP plays in protecting and powering innovations in fintech. Okay, so first, I want to talk about understanding fintech IP. And we know, as we know, IP in fintech isn't just one thing. It includes software code, algorithms, branding, databases, and more. And each of these falls under different forms of protection. The patents protect inventions and processes, like a new blockchain-based payment system. We have the copyright, which covers the creative works, such as source code or user interface design. We have the trademarks, which protects the brand elements, like the names, the logos, and the taglines. Also, the trade secret, the trade secret will safeguard confidential, valuable know-how, like a proprietary risk scoring algorithm. So we'll move on to the role of IP in safety. So IP protection isn't just about ownership. It goes beyond that. It's a shield and a business tool. It helps fintech companies secure their edge in a competitive market. For example, patents gives you exclusive rights to innovation, and it encourages investment in what we call research and development. That's R&D, which is the process of exploring new ideas, refining them, and turning them. Trademarks also help build customer trust, while copyright protects your code. And all these together creates long-term value. So I want to give us a case study for that, which is the Flutterwave IP-driven growth. As you know, Flutterwave right now is tech unicorns invested early in protecting its brand and proprietary payment infrastructure, by securing trademarks in key markets and protecting its backend tech as trade secrets. And Flutterwave has positioned itself strongly for partnership with companies like Uber and Booking.com, and for expansion across over 30 African countries. So now we're moving to the challenges in fintech IP protection. I think that's what's shown on the slide. Yeah, so still, protecting IP in fintech comes with hurdles. And one major challenge is jurisdiction. As you know, innovation is global, yes, but IP laws are not. You may have a trademark in Nigeria now, and it won't protect you in Kenya or the UK. Sorry. Add to that, shifting regulations and staying compliant becomes complex. It becomes so complex, especially for startups scaling fast. And the second case study will be Paystack trademark lesson. And before Paystack acquisition by Stripe, they encountered issues with copycat platform, mimicking their look and name in countries where they had not registered trademarks. And that experience emphasized the importance of securing brand identity early enough, not just locally, but in every potential growth market. It's a lesson in proactive IP protection. And now, how do we balance protection with innovation? Yes, it can stifle growth. FinTech thrives on collaboration, open APIs, partnerships, and integrations. A smart IP strategy protects your crown jewel, like core code or branding. You protect your branding, you protect your core code, while still enabling co-creation and licensing opportunities. So innovation must be protected, but innovations should not be suffocated. So moving on to emerging risk and patent trust, which is another risk. So another risk is the rise of patent trolls. Entities that hoard patents just to sue innovative companies or demand licensing fees. Although it is less common in Nigeria now, but the risk increases as our ecosystem grows. And the best defense is to register your IP early. You register your IP early, you conduct due diligence and monitor. You monitor it for infringement before they become crisis. So in conclusion, I want to ask this question. In lieu of all what I've said above, so what then can Nigerian fintechs do? So first is audit your IP assets, know that you've built, know that you know what you have built that needs protection. You need to know your asset first, yes. And you register your trademarks and your copyrights, and you need to be strategic with patents. You keep some tools like algorithms as trade secrets. You build licensing models into your strategy, and you keep up with both local and international IP laws, which is very important. So I would love to end with this, that IP is not just legal protection, it is a business strategy, and it helps us secure our innovation, it helps us scale with confidence, it attracts serious investment. And in fintech, where ideas move fast, a smart IP approach is what helps them last. So I want to urge us, let's keep building, but let's also protect. As much as we are building, we should also protect whatever it is that we are building. Thank you. And these are the names of the group members that participated in this.
All right, thank you, Mr. DBC, for your presentation. Well done to you and your team for putting it together. We'll be taking presentation from group 2. Please, you can kindly stop sharing your screen. Thank you very much. We'll be taking presentation from group 2, and then we'll move back to our mentors. So group 2, please, if you are ready, we are ready for your presentation. So please, you can kindly start your presentation.
Just hold your microphone back. Just so you know, I'm not 7,000.
I'm so sorry. Can you see my screen? I don't know if it has started sharing.
Yes, it's sharing. We can see you move
Okay.
through the table.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vanessa Uzoho, and I am making the presentation for group 2. So, yeah, I hope I'm very, very audible at this point. So I want to talk about how, so FinTech is the term used to describe the process of financial innovation, solution, and automation in the delivery of financial services. And while there is no generally accepted definition, the hallmark of FinTech is innovation and improvement of existing technology and invention of newer ones in order to solve needs. So these innovations and inventions are the intellectual property of their creators, and therefore intellectual property considerations are invaluable in the fintech ecosystem for many reasons, such as to maintain competitive advantage and mitigate the risk of tech being monopolized by larger entities, to encourage innovation for investments and other economic reasons, and so forth. So Group 2's topic is on navigating the intellectual property landscape in fintech, and more specifically on strategies for protection and innovation. So the table of content is our work is divided into two broad headings: strategies for effective IP protection and future trends and considerations, with other subtopics subsumed under these two broad headings, right? So onto strategies for effective IP protection. There are many strategies that have been identified, right, in the course of academic discourse, but we highlighted some of the most salient ones, and one of them being proactive IP portfolio management. So that includes identifying, assessing, and prioritizing fintech IP access. The key word here is proactive, meaning that intellectual property being an intangible asset is one that is sort of more relatively easily stolen than more tangible or more physical assets. It means that in order to validly protect your IP, you must be proactive, you must be very intentional about making sure that IP protection is top on the list of your priorities, right? So what do we mean by intellectual property portfolio management? It is a systematic approach to handling your intellectual property assets, right? The assets owned by an individual or an organization. And these assets, patents, trademarks, copyright, trade secrets, and other tangible assets, right, can be managed in different ways, such as through IP audits, strategic planning, IP acquisition, maintenance, renewal, and so forth. Again, the key word is that you must be proactive, because if you, at any point where any organization or any individual slacks in, protecting their intellectual property, then they run the risk of it being stolen by other people, right? Identifying key innovations of fintech IP assets. So the process of identifying key innovations is a cornerstone of an effective intellectual property strategy, directly impacting a company's ability to protect its most valuable assets and fuel business growth. This task is often facilitated through invention harvesting, a strategic approach that systematically covers innovation within an organization. What this means is that in the vast majority of instances, right, your intellectual property will not be an outrightly new or novel invention. It can be an innovation on an already existing product or an already existing system or an already existing school of thought. It means that your innovation may not be immediately apparent. And that's why you must be proactive, right? Which means that companies or individuals must actively seek out the whatever innovations have happened on, right? So there has to be rigorous internal processes to ensure that breakthroughs are promptly identified and assessed for patentability, right? We also have assessing fintech IP assets. And the reasons for assessing these assets are multifarious, right? You have things like exclusivity, right? You have future benefits, and you have to make sure that the assets meets with the relevant preconditions before it can be patented, right? So when you talk about exclusivity, right, the benefits that a piece of IP has being tied to exclusivity is the fact that nobody else has access to it. And when a piece of tech is exclusive, right, it becomes a very relevant bargaining chip for investment and other economic considerations. It also becomes like a relevant bargaining chip for sale, to other, for sale or for continued innovation, depending on whatever the owner wants to use it for. right? But then these prerequisites are a lot. So there are certain things that um an IP asset has to meet in order to be valued. And these include that it must be separately identifiable, there should be tangible evidence of the existence of an asset, it should have been created at an identifiable point in time, and so on and so forth, right? The next thing I want to talk about is prioritization and portfolio optimization, maximizing the value of your IP asset, right? So effective intellectual property management is not just about amassing patents, it's about ensuring that the right innovations are protected and that the portfolio evolves in tandem with business goals. So what this means is that um, in order to properly maximize the value of your IP assets, you can't go around patenting every single thing, right? Or anything that you think has a sliver of innovation in it. In the long term, that sort of widespread approach can prove counterproductive, right? So you have to stay on top of your game and make sure that whatever you are putting the effort into patenting or into protecting is actually worth that effort, right? So this includes ranking innovations for protection. This includes abandonment of non-essential patents. This includes continuous portfolio review, adapting to market changes, and all that, right? The point is to eliminate redundancies and focus resources on high impact assets, which ultimately lead to like increased efficiency in terms of resources, in terms of manpower, and so forth. And we have tailored IP strategies aligned with business goals and competitive landscapes. And the reason why your IP strategy has to be tailored is that different companies or different products or different innovations have different IP needs, right? So there are so many there are different assets, right? Such as like patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, and all of that. And they again have different needs depending on the jurisdiction or depending on the industry and so forth. So by tailoring your IP strategy to your business goals and competitive landscape, you can protect your innovations and competitive advantage, enhance your brand reputation, increase revenue, stay ahead of competitors, and so forth. So in order to create an effective strategy, you need to conduct an audit, define business goals, analyze the competitive landscape, develop IP protection plan, implement and monitor. So the point is that there is no one size fits all IP strategy, right? Your requirements or the barriers of entry for patenting or for trademarking or for registering shift from industry to industry, from sector to sector, from product to product. So your IP strategy has to be specifically tailored to align with your business goals. So let's talk about let's talk more in depth about developing a tailored IP strategy, right? Identifying your business goals. That includes looking at the mission or the drive that your business has, identifying your key products or services, analyzing your competitive landscape, right? This includes your competitors, their strengths and weaknesses. So let's talk about collaborative approaches to IP protection through industry partnerships and consortiums. These are increasingly important as businesses and organizations recognize the value of sharing resources and expertise while safeguarding their innovation. And key elements of these collaborative approaches are industry partnerships, consortiums, patent pools and licensing agreements, open innovations, standard setting organizations, and so forth, right? Collaborative IP protection is very important. So that means that two or more entities can come together, right, and pool resources to protect jointly their intellectual property or their innovations, right? And the key benefits of collaborative IP protection. Key benefits of collaborative IP protection include risk mitigation, access to shared resources, accelerated innovation, market access, all of which are very important, very beneficial, ends that companies might want to meet, right? So what are the key challenges of collaborative IP protection? They include cost sharing, access to expertise, increased market power, IP ownership, and so forth. So let's talk about future trends and considerations. When we talk about future trends and considerations, we are thinking in line of the impact that emerging technologies would have on fintech IP protection, right? These emerging technologies include things like blockchain, AI, and so forth. These are technologies that we have not seen to their logical conclusion, and at this point in time, the full extent of their impact is not known, right? So we're still in a very speculative state, and all as to the full extent of their impact, right? So impacts of blockchain includes its ability to create immutable records of ownership. Blockchain enables time-stamped and verifiable records, reducing the risk of IP disputes, right? So that's like blockchain smart contracts as a net positive, right? On fintech IP protection, right? But then there are challenges, such as the open source nature of blockchain projects, as a barrier to determining proprietary rights, such as the decentralized nature of blockchain-based financial solutions, and such as how blockchain operates across borders, right? And how enforcing IP rights in multiple jurisdictions becomes complex as a result. Then impacts on artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence enhances IP protection mechanisms by creating tools that can detect copyright infringements, trademark violations, patent breaches in real time. AI-driven cybersecurity solutions can safeguard trade secrets by detecting and preventing unauthorized access to proprietary fintech algorithms and data. But again, artificial intelligence poses challenges, such as how determination of ownership of AI-generated innovations are difficult, patent eligibility, and relating to the distinction between human-created AI algorithms from pre-existing solutions, and unauthorized use of data in AI training can lead to IP infringement claims, right? And we also need to talk about evolving regulatory frameworks and their impact on fintech IP strategies. So again, IP, fintech, these are continuously evolving sectors, right? And therefore, the law must continue to evolve to catch up with and regulate these sectors, right? So key regulatory trends include cross-border regulation and global harmonization, because IP, again, can be used and can be abused across borders, right? So you need like global collaboration in order to make sure that IP rights can be fully enforced, right? Then there's digital assets and cryptocurrency regulations and enhanced data privacy regulations. So these regulatory frameworks are important, right, in order to ensure full protection and full maximization of fintech IP strategies, right? So the impact on fintech IP strategies include better patent protection, trademark protection, international protection, and so forth. Then we talk about the role of international cooperation and standardization in enhancing fintech IP protection. right? So international cooperation and standardization play a crucial role in strengthening fintech IP protection by harmonizing legal frameworks, reducing conflicts, and fostering innovation. Again, as I said earlier, fintech can be used and abused across um, national and international borders, right? That's why there needs to be global collaboration in order to ensure that fintech protect IP protection is done properly and is done to the fullest extent, right? So the need for international cooperation in fintech IP protection, right, would create like a harmonized and coherent set of IP laws. There would be mutual recognition of agreements and cross-border enforcement, amongst others, right? We also have the role of standardization in fintech IP protection. And that would standardization would ensure interoperability, security, and legal clarity of fintech innovations. So the key benefits include unified patent systems, technical standards for fintech, data privacy standards, and anti-counterfeiting technologies. In summary, in summary, intellectual property considerations are essential for the valid functioning of like the fintech ecosystem, right? They're essential because they promote and enhance innovation. They are essential because they ensure that innovators and creators within the fintech ecosystem can reap the full benefits of their creations, of their inventions, without it being stolen or being monopolized by people with larger resources or in more developed sectors. So we think that it is very, very important, and companies must pay key attention to making sure that IP protection is a big part of their fintech journey, and of their fintech journey and their fintech companies. So thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Vanessa, for that wonderful presentation from you. Well done again to you and to your team for putting it together. Both presentations were well made and delivered. A job well done to you guys. Okay, we have our two mentors now with us on call. I think we'll be heading over back to them for their feedback and also their discourse into today's topic. So I think I'll go back to Mr. Max. Mr. Max, you're welcome again. Please, I would just like to hear from you what you have for us in regards to today's class.
Okay, thank you very much. Hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you better now. We can hear you now.
Okay, thanks so much. I think today's apologies, sorry. Today's class I think has been very interesting because for me it's the intersection of where my passion really lies, where which essentially is where technology and intellectual property come across each other. First of all, let me start by, of course, commending the JIIPCC team for putting this together. Thank you particularly to Auntie Sophie, who ensured I did not forget to join the meeting. I thank you because she's always there to help keep me on track and remind me to join the class on time. And then, of course, Dennis for wonderfully moderating this session. And, of course, the other mentor, Mr. George, and then the mentees, particularly the two presenters who presented on behalf of their groups. I looked through your presentations and I was quite happy. I'm happy that your presentations covered a large portion of the subject matter and we're really able to go into actual case studies, because when it comes to some of these things, they are quite abstract. If you do not try to locate them in actual events, sometimes it looks like what you are saying is far-fetched. So it's good when you use case studies. That really it aids your understanding and it drives your point home even more clearly. So in the course of the first group's presentation, they spoke about something I'll touch on a little bit, which is patent trolls. Which is patent trolls. It's a very interesting concept. The people, they are patent trolls. Essentially, the way one described them, these are people who, get patent protection, not with the intention of innovation, not with the intention of using that patent to actually commercialize it and make money from it and all of that, or even necessarily license it. What they want to do is to ambush people, wait for an innovative person to develop a business model that incorporates the invention covered by their patent, and then they spring up on you and sort of like a hostage situation. They are not demanding you pay them off, otherwise they go to court, they get an injunction, and they stop you from launching your products or from putting your product in the market because your product is using one of the inventions that is covered by their patent. So it's a very troublesome issue. Of course, there's borderline also. There are also legitimate cases where people have developed a patent, they do not have money yet to commercialize, they're in the process of commercializing, and then a bigger player tries to come steal their invention. Or sometimes, young startups have this wonderful idea, this wonderful innovation, and they have gone around to seek for partners. And because of seeking for partners, they have to pitch their idea, and the partners who are much bigger players steal that idea and begin to commercialize it. So when the startup comes up and says, look, you are violating my patent, sometimes the bigger players need to claim, try to play the innocent game, the victim game, and paint themselves as innovators who are trying to move forward, and then these patent trolls are trying to, trouble them. So it's a very tricky area. It's an area where innovation and protection meet, and you always have to wonder, there's that tension. Do we shut down, the so-called patent trolls and allow innovators? But if we do that, even the innovators themselves are then not running the risk that tomorrow somebody else is going to come, infringe on their own patent, and if they also try to enforce it, the person also claims that they are patent trolls. So so it's an area where there's a tension where, a balance must be struck to avoid dampening innovation, but at the same time ensuring that when people take their time to register patents, that those patents are actually valid. So, if you notice, I focus a lot on patents. So which brings me to my next point. Patents actually is one of the main thing for, one of the cornerstone of the, I'll call it the security that fintechs have over their business model. Because again, we know that fintechs usually are lightweight, companies that started lightweight, they don't have other assets. So most of their assets is the innovative idea that they Please confirm you can still hear me.
Okay, we were not hearing you for a bit, but we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, yeah, a call came through and cut off my network. Yeah, so essentially I was saying that patents, flowing to my next point now, after the first point about the tension and the balance we have to strike between patent trolls. The next point is that you notice we hammer a lot on patents when we talk of fintechs. There are many other IPs that apply to fintech. Copyright is huge because for most fintechs, their code, their algorithms, their source codes and all are protected by copyright, not by patent. I'm sure by now we all understand that you cannot use patent to protect codes and algorithms and source codes. What you use, because the law considers source codes and all as creative works of expression of the coder who designs them. So in a sense, they are protected by copyright, not by patent. So there's also a huge argument about what we call computer implemented inventions, which are protected by patent, in some jurisdictions and not in some jurisdictions. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, there's almost a blanket ban. When you go to the patent registry and you want to patent a software-related patent, they'll tell you you can only use copyright. But lately, they've designed what they call the business method patents that allow you register fintech-related patents. But coming back to my point now on fintech and patents, which is that most fintechs, the most valuable asset they have is not a physical building, unlike traditional financial institutions that have branches spread over all the 36 states of Nigeria and all of that. Most fintechs don't have that. So they don't have their strongest asset base is not necessarily in any physical things they own, but it's more in the creative and the innovative ideas that drive their business model. And of course, one of the best ways to protect creative and innovative ideas is through patent. So that's why patent is very important for a fintech. In fact, more often than not, when funders come to invest in your fintech, what they are looking out for is patents. The reason is that they know that even if for some reason, due to operational reasons, your fintech fails, they can always sell those patents or hold on to them for strategic reasons. So for a lot of funders, what they are looking at most critically when they are doing due diligence to invest in your fintech is the patents that you own. So that's my third point, essentially, that patents are crucially important, for fintechs, as their most important asset base. So moving on to my fourth point is also on this same issue, more of in developing fintech products. There's another major risk that a fintech can run into. Now, maybe I would explain a little bit about what we call open source software or open source licensing generally. So by now we understand that with copyright simply means that if I am the one who creates a work, I have the exclusive right over it. Nobody else can use my work without my permission. Nobody can reproduce that work, sell it, or implement it without getting a license from me. But in the early days of development of the computer in the early 90s, people realized that asserting copyright claims was stifling innovation, because somebody maybe innovates a new innovative way to get computers to do graphic user interface displays, and he gets a copyright over it. Nobody else can use it. So somebody else has an idea that can build on that, but he cannot because he doesn't have the money to take a license. So developers came together and said, look, instead of us acting this way, can we collaborate and ensure that we can all build up innovation together rather than everybody trying to operate as a silo? So rather than asserting your copyright, put your copyright into a pool. So it's a type of licensing where you say, look, I hereby give any other person the right to use my copyright and create further innovations based on it. But on the condition that if you invent or you create some new operation based on that copyright that I give to you, then you must also make it available to other people the way I made it available to you. So essentially, it's type of a common ownership. So that's how open source software actually came about. That people say, look, we all innovate and we allow each other build innovation on each other's products on the condition that nobody can take his innovation out of that pool and now say he wants to ring fence it or assert his copyright. So the reason why this is important in software development is that as a software developer or a fintech, be careful how you use open source software in developing your proprietary fintech technology. Because if you do that and you intend to use that as part of your exclusive business model, the moment you incorporate open source licensing software into it, then it means that you are mandated by that license to also allow third parties use that software freely. So there must be a dichotomy between certain things that you want to put out there as open source and things that you want to put as proprietary, the ones you want to retain full right to. So because of that, there's what we call clean room processes. So clean room process simply means that you must have a way of auditing your software development program to know when to use open source software and when not to use open source software. So that way your developers are aware that, look, for this particular line of our fintech, don't use any open source software. For this line, you can use open source software. So by doing that, you are ensuring that you do not mistakenly put into the public domain or into the common licensing regime unique parts of your business model that you want to keep exclusively to yourself. So that's another risk that fintechs must take in the IP space. Of course, there are so many other aspects of IP which Group 2 also touched very well. Trademarks also comes in very handy because for a fintech, your primary way of making your product known is on social media, online, and all of that. So you definitely would need to protect your trademark to ensure that third parties are not passing off, as you online and essentially stealing your potential customers. So I think I'll end at this point, and when we get to the Q&A, I can take some more questions and interact some more. Thank you, Dennis, and back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Max, for such an insightful discourse from you. Thank you for such an insightful discourse from you. We really learned a lot. Okay, Mr. Max has given us his discourse from today and also given a little feedback to the presentation. Mr. George, we also like to hear from you on your discourse for today. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We are happy to have you in class. Yes, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible. Right?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. Interesting topic, right? Of discussion around IP protection for fintechs, and it's one that I kind of always look at it slightly differently, um, in a more operational reality um, of fintechs. I mean, broadly, there's the part that relates to your brand IP, right? And then there's the part that relates to your service IPs, right? Your brand IP, that one is very straightforward, right? Your brand assets, your trademarks, your brand name, your logos. Some even go as far as protecting colors, right? There are situations where we've seen fintechs that tell you that, I mean, their colors are unique because they were uniquely mixed, right? They mix different color codes in certain particular ways to get a totally unique color that wasn't existent before, right? And they kind of now own that color. And anytime you want to apply or use that color, you have to either get ready to license that use, or you use the regular version of that color. We have different levels of brand asset protection. That there is already frameworks and structures on how to protect one's brand. It's for you to be very conscious on time, right, and move quickly, because a lot of what happens to fintechs are in the early days. Most of the founders are always first of all thinking about the problem they are solving and how they can quickly get to market, right? In the initial times, they are not very particular about brand protection. I mean, there are very few fintechs you will see that, as at the time of their launch, they've done any form of trademarking or any form of brand asset protection, logos. A lot of times, the techies don't even think about that. It's just to get the most that they do is the domain name, right? And because that domain is where they will serve their customers from. So they get the domain, maybe is JIIPCC.com, and that is all, right? But when it comes to the brand assets, like logos, or brand name and all that, and all that, they don't even remember that. In fact, some go years, right, and grow to a particular level before they even now remember that they actually have never done any form of brand access protection. So it is the point where we actually most of the time need to call the attention of these fintechs as they are growing to now do the necessary thing they need to do to protect their brand assets. Some go as far as even securing names that are close match to theirs, domains that are close match to theirs, right? The bigger guys have probably like 50 domains that they acquire, right? Anything that is a bit close to theirs, so that to reduce the chances of somebody being able to mimic them. They'll do Gypsy.com, Gypsy Nigeria, Gypsy NG, Gypsy N. Just do a variation of it, like to just knock off any possibility of anyone coming out anywhere near close to anything that resembles their brand, right? So the brand asset side of IP is a lot more straightforward. Now, if you come to the service asset side of IP, where you now start talking about the technical assets, right? Um, for the guys that are into have a hardware component, right? Things that you can touch, is also slightly more straightforward when it comes to hardware, right? For the guys that are, I mean, and that is where there's heavy, very heavy patenting, right? Because for the hardware, more often than not, right, that creation is always pretty much, unique, right? Because naturally, when you want to bring out something that people can feel and touch, you're naturally unlikely, right, to create the exact thing that is in the market, right? Some shape maybe is at the back side of that thing, by the side of it, under it, on top of it. Some in some form and in some ways, there will be that difference or that differentiation that you make, right, in putting that hardware together. So most of the time, for hardware, is also a little bit much more straightforward, right? And patenting, right, is a lot more straightforward when it comes to hardware. And the time to grant patents, which the last speaker talked about, is a lot more shorter, right? Now, when it comes to software, which is where a lot of the fintechs, you know, are, it becomes a lot more tricky, right? How do you protect your service IPs, your technical IPs, as a fintech playing in the software side of things, software as a service, particularly? The truth is that, like also the last speaker mentioned, I mean, patenting, while it has all the merits, not until recently, it's not something that is easy to do for a software company, especially in Nigeria, right? So because for softwares, it's a bit tricky to prove that you're the first person to literally um, use that way to solve that problem. It's really, a lot more harder to prove, right? How do you prove that you're the first person that said that we should be able to click on what do you call it now? Click on pay, right? And then we put my card number and I pay, right? How how can you essentially pretend that what I'm using, how I'm trying to process my payments? How do you know exactly I'm not touching any of your stuff? How do you know exactly how I'm trying to process my payment? And the second part about when you're proving patenting is that you now have to do to some certain level expose, right, your own IP, right, to a certain degree, expose the workings of your IP, which is sometimes the secret sauce around how you're able to do what you're able to do. So, in a view to prove that there's a bit of exposure that happens, on your IP, right? So a lot of time it's always very tricky, which is why increasingly, except you're really doing something superly new, right? Which is not often the times in a lot of fintechs. But when they are dabbling with new technology, not providing service offering with existing technology, you wake up in the morning today and then you create a new fintech that gives out loans. There's nothing new in what you're doing, right? Except you're using a new technology. You're now doing that with some form of blend of, maybe you're blending LLM models with blockchain, cryptography, to be able to, do it. But you use a typical Node.js to create a software and then start giving out loans, right? And say it's a lend tech, right? It's nothing really extraordinary in doing that. No matter what you claim that you're doing it in a particular kind of way, there's no new technology that you're introducing. At best, you're introducing a business model more than it is that you're introducing a new technology. So it's really very tricky when it comes to IP protection for software companies, particularly fintech, right? So what you do most of the time is to protect yourself, right? Is to create the necessary structure within your organization to protect your own IP, to ensure that um, the people that have access to the codes, to the repos where code bases are, are strictly very minimal per time, especially when it comes to the consolidated repos, right? They are very minimal per time. There's strictly heavy technical fortifying, whereby anybody that even accesses it is well known. So at any point in time, there's a connection. There's a connection to something you do tomorrow, right? It is very well known that you had access, to the code base, where the master repo of that particular fintech is, and they can try to make a case and connect you to that. So it's more of making case and connection than actually saying, this is my IP that you have stolen, right? And it's why, for the most part, most of the fintechs, I think I mentioned this once here before, right? Most of them, no 1, 2, 3 person works on a major part of the core project of that fintech, right? Especially for as you grow bigger, you start to disenfranchise and defragment, whatever it is you're doing. You will see situation where 3, 4 teams are working on the same project and they have no clue, they have no idea that they are all working on the same project, right? This team is working on, they give it a code name, Project Xerox, right? And they are doing something, but that thing that they are working on is actually an input to another thing Team B is working on. They call it Project Fly Zone. And what Team B is working on is another input that will be meshed with what Team C is working on, and it's only 1, 2 persons that sit at the global level, at the master level, that merges these things together, that have access to the global databases that contains all the merged codes, right? So it's one of the major ways that most fintechs try to protect themselves. They try to defragment this so that a worst case scenario, you only have access and knowledge about a part, of the system, right? You're limited access to understand how the entire system or the entire technical know-how of that particular service is working, right? It's only to what you're exposed to that you understand, and that part that is not sufficient for you to replicate what it is that they are doing, in their own exact codes. Rather, you can go and replicate it again with using another code base and another approach, right? For fintechs, right, it is a lot more about approach. It's a lot more about speed, right? It's a lot more about speed than it is much about IP theft. Um, it's a very interesting space, because if you look at today, most of the fintechs, right, even away from the fintech, most of the technology companies, they're all doing the same thing, right? If this guy brings out one feature today, give it 2, 3 months, you see that feature in the next guy's application, right? This guy, drops one feature, tomorrow. Snapchat became a thing by disappearing messages. Couple of weeks, months later, they first of all tried to acquire it. They didn't want to sell. They want to build in that disappearing messages into Meta applications, including WhatsApp, right? So you see one feature that looks interesting, that's like a thing, give the other guys like a few months to build it in. So it's not really about the IP, it's the speed at which you're able to use what you're building to create value, right, and move the market. Because at the end of the day, the valuation is not much about, especially in the fintech world. It's actually lesser about your IP. It's more about how you have transformed it to create value and the revenues that you're driving. Because if you sit on an IP that is not generating money, it's not pushing, it has not resorted to transaction processing, that IP is as good as useless, right? It is just an artifact, right? So fintechs value speed. Everything is about time to market. How can we able to do this and get it to market? How can we move very quickly in whatever we do? Because in that software as a service space, whatever it is that you bring out will be definitely replicated, right, by your counterparts. And they don't need to take your IP to replicate it. All they need to do is understand the functionality of what you're serving, or what you're brought out is. They would figure out a way, right, to be able to create it. It will only take a little bit more time, right, than just stealing your IP and replicating it, or licensing your already existing IP. But where you put barriers, proper barriers to that, you buy yourself more time, so that by the time, before they get to the point where they've replicated that future, you probably have even advanced it, or you've brought out something interesting enough again, or you have cornered a good part of the market, with that whole future. So heavily, bulk of protection of service IPs or technical IP, bulk of the work is within the organization than it is with outside frameworks, regulatory related gatekeepers, right? Like you have on the brand side, where you have the copyright commission. You can report anybody that has done this and take them to court. You have trademark, the one for trademark. You have all those kind of things, right? When it comes to the code-based side of things, there's really a little bit of it's neither here and there. And patenting, which is the only veritable one, is one a long, it's not a quick process, doesn't happen very quickly. It takes out time before a patent is granted. It is also not very easy to prove, especially in the software space, right? And before you finish doing your whole patenting, market has moved. That feature has already been replicated. In fact, at some point, it might even be already stale while you are still patenting. It's already stale. So speed becomes a very critical element, that your intellectual property, you're only using it to buy time, right? To you innovate again and keep taking more and more of the market, right? So it is more about your responsibility as an organization on how you can put structures within your organization to protect, your codes, to protect, your IP, especially from the biggest threat. Your biggest threat is more of your staff than even external people in most cases, right? Your competition, they are hardly hacking your system to go and get your code base. Nobody does that, right? The biggest threat to your codes are actually your own staff. So it's more of a situation whereby you're able to put the necessary internal structures in place to make sure that there's incredible limitation to anybody that will be able to have access, right, to the entirety, right, of what makes your system work, the entirety of the IP of your system, right? Put the right structures in place to manage, your development operation, right? So that it's inbuilt, right? Natively protects itself, and then where necessary, you can then stretch and have the legal guys be doing the IP, the patenting route as an extra layer, where truly you actually have a real case for patent with new technology, right? But new business models are not patentable. Business models are not patentable, which is what most fintechs really are, than it is new technology. most fintechs are using the same technology, but just serving it in different ways, right? Different business models, different use cases to serve the customers. It's few times that you see a new technology come to play, or a combination of old technology in such a way to create something technically new. So it's not about the service they create, it's the newness of what you have done technically, right? And it's very few times you really see people that do something technically new. Most of the time is to use existing technology, existing know-how, sometimes components that have been used in different ways to recreate, right, what they want to create with their own business model, right? And then they go out there and serve the market. So patenting might not be your first place to run to. You only waste the time that you need to capture your market quickly before whatever it is that you're doing is replicated, by another person. So it's just to throw that bit of um, direction to the conversation, to say there's a lot of responsibility within you as an organization than it is for any regulatory or structure outside the organization to help protect you against IP theft when it comes to the technical side of IP. Yeah. Thank you. I think I'll leave it here for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. George. Thank you so much for your discourse and everything that you shared. A big thank you to Mr. Marks as well for also sharing his thoughts. Our two mentors have done so well in running us through, some of what they have for us today in class. And it has been very, very wonderful listening to them. We've taken feedbacks, we've had presentations. Now we want to get into the question and answer segments. So please, if you have a question, you can kindly raise your hand. We'll take your question and we'll direct it to our mentor. So do we have any person question? Do we have any persons with questions in class? Okay. Itana, can you hear me? It seems
Yeah.
I can't, you're muted, but you can't really hear you. Do we have any person with a question in class?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Sincere appreciation to our mentors and also to our presenters and other insightful sections. Thank you very much. Much appreciation from here. Quickly, I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask. My first question here is that I've actually observed, based on the conversations that we've been having, I've actually observed that, with respect to IPL and especially towards the fintech companies, that for them to protect their brand, it's actually cut across, the various classes of IP. That's, the trademarks, patents, copyrights, and sometimes startups, fintechs will, have possible, problems in doing all this, protecting all this, their brands in all these classes. First of all, they will need to protect their brands, under the trademarks. They will need to protect the codes and all those stuff, the software, under the patency and under the copyright. And, for them that are just setting their feet or trying to navigate, all the operations, in the open market, I don't know how would they be able to go about it. Is it that they can go about it step by step, you know, possibly to start with the trademarking aspect of it? And some of them they don't really have that huge financial pocket, to start with. I would like to just get a feedback on that, sir. Then the other question is in the situation where I think Mr. Mark actually mentioned something here a big fintech company, the big players that we have out there now, takes advantage of a small company, possibly as he said, maybe you pitch your idea to them and you want to possibly make use of their infrastructure and every other thing. And this kind of thing happens every time. So what are the remedies available to that small company, that small fintech company that is just starting? And possibly, if it's even possible, those small companies are not even registered yet. Yeah, so what are the remedies available to them? Would you actually advise that maybe a non-disclosure agreement or non-circumvention agreement is added to their whole partnership on anything? I would also like to hear about that. Then also in a situation where a company registers its brand or its service in a particular class, I think this is happening recently between the Paystack versus Zapit conflict that is, that's trending currently. We heard that Paystack, you know, registered the brand, under a different class, especially towards the I think is the software part of it. And so in that kind of situation now, it could be for a malicious purpose, we don't know, it could be for financial purpose, we can't really say. How do such fintech companies sort out themselves in such a situation? Because we know that there are different classes in IPL when you want to register your company. So how can a fintech company, possibly a small one, protect its brand and protect its brand across these classes, to prevent malicious purposes of these bigger brands? So those are my questions, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Itana, for your question. I think, Mr. Max, majority of the questions were directed to you and within your field or your area. So, Mr. Max, do you have an answer for the questions, sir?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, very interesting and practical question. So the first question actually, you asked on, fintechs not having a startups, of course, they don't have that, the money to protect all of the IP. It's a very practical issue. So a lot of the startups I work with is one of the practical. So I usually draw like an IP protection roadmap, maybe an 18-month IP protection roadmap. So what we essentially do is that you need to understand that different IPs have different requirements for protection. If you still remember, we mentioned that copyright, you do not need any registration to protect to protect your copyright. All you need is just evidence of when you created the copyright work. So sometimes it's something as simple as you have written a source code. You can as well choose to save it or send it to yourself or to your team member. Of course, a trusted team member, you share it with them via email. What that does is that the fact that you have emailed that copyright work means that if a dispute arises as to who first created that copyright work, you can bring the email you sent in June 2012 to show evidence that as of June 2012, you had already created this work. If the other person who claims to be the owner of the work only has evidence to show that I created the work in 2016, then you can, prevail if there's a dispute as to who is the owner of that copyright work. So those are some of the simple ways to protect IP, because you don't need to register to get protection when it comes to copyright. Even though in a practical sense, what we usually advise startup founders with respect to copyright is that you do not necessarily need to register copyright to get protection. But because of the strategy of ensuring that you get the longest possible protection, again, it comes back to another fact you need to understand about copyright law. Under copyright law, if a human author, a human person creates a copyright work, for instance, I write a novel, or I compose a music, or I design a software code, if I do it as a human being, the protection I get is that for my lifetime and for 70 years after I die, nobody else can use that copyright work without getting a license from me or without permission from me. But if a company creates a copyright work, then the protection would last only for 50 years from the date of creation. So because of that, we tell fintech founders, when you create a copyright work in your FinTech, always, first of all, put it in your name as a person. And then you can now do a license agreement or an assignment where you now transfer it to your company. That way you get the full benefit of your lifetime and 70 years after, rather than getting only 50 years worth of protection. So you can see that when it comes to copyright, it's just about strategy and wisdom. It's not necessarily, you don't have to spend money to protect your copyright. So that is one IP area that for FinTech startups, you don't have to spend money. You can immediately start protection. So when I usually drop an 18-month work plan for IP protection, copyrights are things we start protecting immediately because we don't have to spend money on it. Now, when you move over to trademarks, we trademark to enjoy full protection of a trademark and so that nobody else can infringe or use your trademark. You need to register it. But even without registering your trademark, you still have some level of protection by what we call passing off. Passing off is a type of lawsuit you can bring under what we call common law that allows you to prevent a third party from using your brand to deceive members of the public as if you are the one. It's somewhat like trademark protection, but it's just that the requirements are a little bit more difficult. You have to prove that your product already has a reputation in the marketplace and that the defendant, that is the other party who stole your brand, actually is using that reputation. So you have to prove it. When it comes to trademark, once you have a registered trademark, you don't have to prove reputation. The moment you can show the court, I registered my trademark on 15th of January 2021, and in 2023, these guys started using the trademark. You don't have to prove that your trademark has reputation in the marketplace. Instantly, you are entitled to prevent him from using it. So you can see why using trademark protection is better. But from what you have said now, because you might not have the money to protect all of it, what we do now is that, first of all, we do that route map. So, the work plan. And in that work plan, we said that, look, some of your core trademark, your core brand elements, protect them immediately, like your name, your product name, your product logo. The one that stands out the most, you protect it immediately. You might have secondary names for your product, secondary logos that you also use as derivative. You can say, okay, we'll protect this one in 6 months' time, or in 12 months' time, or even in 18 months' time, just so that, by then you have put your product in the market, you have made enough money to justify spending money registering for that trademark. So you can see how you can also break down your trademark. But it stops at copyright and trademark. Now, with patents, the law is different. With a patent, if you do not register your patent, you lose it forever. The moment you put that patent into the market, you can no longer go back and patent it. So that's why with patents, you must protect it from the beginning. But then there are ways to, because patenting is also very expensive. In fact, in terms of cost implication, patent is much more expensive than trademark. Registering a patent is a lot more expensive than registering a trademark. But when it comes to patent, you must protect immediately. You cannot wait. However, there's a law called trade secret law that can allow you keep certain things as a secret, and the law will protect you at that level without registration. So in our route map, for instance, we say, okay, fine, all the patents that the startup owns, we will delay registering them until the 12th month. So between the 1st to the 12th month, we only will protect them as a trade secret. So trade secret protection also means having protocols in place in your company that ensures that no third party has access to that patented, other information you want to patent. So it will involve things like encryption. It involves things like setting access codes for different employees. So not every employee would have access to that information. It involves things like ensuring, and the person who has mentioned that every time you have to discuss with third parties, and it's happened to me before, that I led a startup we're trying to discuss with a bigger FinTech to use their infrastructure to actually put out a test use of their, a test use case of their, of their business model. But in going to that negotiation, you must sign a non-disclosure agreement. If you sign a non-disclosure agreement and you disclose that information you want to patent under that non-disclosure agreement, the law considers that you have not revealed it to the public yet. Therefore, you can still come back in 12 months' time or in 18 months' time and register that patent. But if you release that information without a non-disclosure agreement, then you lose it for life. You cannot come back later and say, look, I want to patent this. The moment you are put in the market, you cannot. But if you do that under the protection of a non-disclosure agreement, you are covered. But however, there's a practical challenge, and this has happened to me several times. There was a time I represented a startup trying to negotiate with a bank to help implement some payment processing capacity for them. And it became an issue because the bank would tell that we won't sign a non-disclosure agreement with you. You are the one coming to seek our favor. Why should we sign with you? And sometimes, the banks are afraid that they can sign with you now, tomorrow you can turn around on the strength of that and sue them. So sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get a bigger party to agree to sign a non-disclosure agreement with you. So what we do in those instances is that even if they refuse to sign a non-disclosure agreement with you, what you can do is that you ensure that there's written communication that makes it clear that you are coming to present proprietary information to them. So a simple email says, tomorrow we are coming to your office by 3 p.m. as agreed to disclose to you some of our innovative ideas on a new payment processing modality for your bank. So that way, if they turn back tomorrow and they choose to steal that idea, you can show evidence that, look, there's some written evidence that shows that you were the one who disclosed that information to them, even though the best option is to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But again, you might not always have that luxury where the party agrees to sign a non-disclosure agreement with you. So that just shows you the IP treatment of the different things that a fintech would need and how you can space them out and give yourself time to grow and have generated enough income to be able to fund registration. But no startup can actually do registration of all their IP products at once. It would really, except you have serious funding at the startup. And even if you do have serious funding, my advice to the fintech startup would be, look, use some of that money to, do your product development, to do your marketing and all of that. And, like I said, we design an 18-month roadmap that allows us space out when we have to register each IP work. So that's one innovative way to ensure that even though you do not have the money, you still get your protection. You just leverage the type of IP, use the non-conventional IP models like passing off, like trade secrets that I mentioned. All of that would help you, would help you stretch out your protection or stretch out the time frame you need to raise funds to be able to spend money on registration of your IP works. So that's for the first question. And then the second question, I believe, was on this issue of where you already have a trademark registered in one class and another business decides to, or another maybe bigger player decides to also begin to use that trademark in another class or registers it in another class. So yes, it's an interesting issue. But the first thing to note is that in trademark law, you are right to say that, yes, we have 45 different classes you can register a trademark under. The whole idea is that in trademark law, the law doesn't want to simply give you a monopoly over a mark, over a word or a name or a logo, because sometimes you are only using that logo for a particular business line. Somebody else in an unrelated business line should be able to use it in his own business line. So it's as simple as saying, if I choose to start a chain of hotels, for instance, and I want to call that chain of hotels, say maybe Xerox Hotel. Of course, we all know Xerox is the popular producers of copying machines and all of that. It's a popular trademark, of course. So there's kind of a different rule that applies to popular trademarks. I'm just using this by way of example. So you can see that if I'm running Xerox Hotels and Xerox is selling their business machines, you can see that we are in two different markets. There's no risk of confusion, because somebody is going to buy computers, knows is going to buy computers. Somebody is coming to patronize my hotel, is coming to patronize my hotel. You can see that they are not exactly in the same market. So essentially, the 45 classes we have, 39 of them are trademark. Those are classes that protect physical goods. Then the other 6 of them now, that's from class 40 to 45, protect services. So things like banking services, insurance services is in class 43. Telecommunications, I think, is in class 42. Things like legal services, security services in class 45. So what it simply means is that it is possible that 2 different businesses can own the same trademark because they are in different markets entirely. So somebody is, in legal services can own the word For instance, the name of my law firm is Ever Law Associates. So somebody else can be a bank in class 41, and he can also say Ever Law Bank. You can see that there's no risk of confusion because one is a law firm, one is a bank. But like I mentioned, when it comes to well-known or popular trademarks, they have a type of protection where even if they do not register in that class, to prevent what we call free riding, where a third party is simply trying to use their popularity to develop its own business, they have some level of protection. But having said that, note that when a court is faced with a trademark infringement case, the court is not concerned about that issue of class. The question that the law provides for is that the moment a person who is not the owner of a trademark uses it in a way that is confusingly, that will confuse members of the public, there's an infringement. So the argument as to his own trademark is registered in class 45, mine is registered in class 42, is only relevant to show that there's no risk of confusion because his market and the market are totally different. But if in actual fact your business models are similar, the fact that you register in different classes will not stop the court from finding. So the popular MTN case we had recently, for instance, somebody asked a question that, so is it possible to say that, that if MTN chooses to register and use that trademark in a different class, would they be allowed to? They won't, because both companies are playing in the same field in technology, in the technology space. So the fact that it's registered in different classes won't matter because the consumers who are going to be faced with those products will be confused because the products, both companies play in largely the same market and targeting the same consumer. So when the question comes as to whether there's an infringement or not, the issue of what class you registered in is no longer very important. The issue of class is important at the point of registration, but at the point of infringement, the question the court is faced with ask itself, will the relevant members of the public be confused when they see this trademark? Will they be mistaking the two of them for each other because they are in similar industries, not necessarily because the class, the other person registered his trademark is different. So yes, there's still protection for you, even if the person chooses to go behind your back. And the reason is simple. Even if you are running a telecoms business, for instance, in that same telecoms business, there are different aspects of the business. There's an aspect of that business that provides, for instance, encryption, cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is in a different class of trademark registration from telecom services purely, but you can see that two of them are connected in a way. So it's the same thing. One product can be used in different industries at the same time. So the fact that you are in different classes alone is not enough reason for you to infringe or try to steal another person's trademark. So that's just to clarify that, on that point. I hope I've answered. I know there were 3 questions. I believe I've answered 2 of them. I can't remember what the third one was. But if the third one also related to me, we could still bring it up and I'll try to provide an answer to that as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marks.
Let me.
Okay, yeah, Mr. George, please, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a comment here, and Mr. Mark did a very good job in breaking this down. Yeah, I've been at the center of quite a number of IP controversies, actually, right? With different organizations, and I can tell you that maybe it's by virtue of how it has just played out with every of the situation I've been in. None of them have actually ended up in a verdict when it comes to legal dragging it to court. And because at some point we always had to find out that there are 2 things that have always happened, right? Is either we always had to find out that we had to settle our line in one way or the other, or in 1 or 2 of the situation, the reason or the purpose for which I was doing what I was doing was more like it was project based. So while that whole thing was dragging, I went on and did what I wanted to do. right? And in fact, that one was very interesting because the media then put a little bit of fire to it because it was between um, myself I was involved with a particular bank and another bank's brand. The other bank had an SME related platform. That was before I did First Bank, SME Connect, and I was also doing a kind of program for SMEs, right? But it was an event, right, where I was bringing investors together, VCs together to do a live pitch for SMEs. So it was like an event. While this other one was a digital platform by another bank, right? So it was SME Connect as a digital platform, and First Bank and then the other one was an event I was doing, right, called, let me see, Funding Connect. Yeah, right. It was actually Funding Connect, but because it was targeted at small businesses, right, um, they felt that it was a breach. And the funniest part it was that at every single time you check the papers, it was at some point we had to take it that it was done on purpose. When you see a page, they always put it in the center spread. You see one page on the right will be, the one for the SME Funding Connect, and then you see the one on the left is the First Bank SME Connect. They were always putting it on the center back to back, so it was evoking even much more heated issue because once you open the newspaper, you will just see both of them side by side, right? And there were letters flying um, everywhere, right? So the thing is, a lot of times when it comes to court cases around these things, they are tricky because they are drawn out. As in, you can go on and on, especially where the people involved are relatively not too far off in size. You can go on and on and on and on, right, in trying to prove, who did this first, right? It should not be a case of who registered versus who has been using it, right, first, but without registering. And then is it the guy that started using this thing, like Mr. Mark, tried to point out, but has never registered it, or is it the guy that have now registered it subsequently? Because as at the time of registration, the searches revealed that, nothing like that was existing, and the guy has now registered it and has now also built a brand around it, right? So where does it lie? So a lot of time it can be very long drawn out, trying to marry um both together, the one around the classes situation. Yeah, this one is using it in this class. We are both in the same industry, but we are using it for different purposes, right? Even though we are playing in the same space, we are both fintechs. I'm a fintech, you're a fintech, for example. Maybe I'm using it to deal with I'm using it to align with maybe a customer service related thing. You are using it to align with a loan related thing, but we are both fintechs, right? So it's always very tricky. I've also been in situation where NDA issues, right? And that's where you find out that I don't give a lot of big deal in signing NDAs. Neither do I hardly, right, send an NDA to anybody to sign. Because the truth is, except when you're sharing really, really, really top secrets, it's also another one that is very difficult to prove, right? That I did something and you want to say I signed a non-disclosure agreement and you want to link what I'm doing to what I'm doing to information that you shared with me. I think he made an example around the organization that the bigger organization that the smaller organization came to. That you're coming to discuss what you have, you can't tell in any way if it is not already the reason why I'm interested in it in the first place is not already something that I'm doing, within my organization somewhere, even though it's not yet out, right? It is not already something I'm working on. Now, proving, and most of the time, the final thing is never always 100% same. There are a few times where it's a clear case whereby it's like almost copy and paste. Most of the time, the final thing is not always same, but the elements of what it does could be same. I came to pitch you around how I can use I want to provide a service for speech to text for your customer support group, and then I kind of asked you a bit of questions around how you're doing your speech to text, because somewhere we've been thinking about speech to text, and we're working on speech to text, but it's not out yet. And after having that conversation with you, my team's like, come on, wait a minute, this thing is actually not as tricky, a big deal. It's just because we've been trying to go left instead of we should just go a little bit right before we go left. And then they say, you know what, we don't even need these guys. Let's just do small adjustment to what we are doing and go with our own, right? And then we'll bring our speech to text tomorrow, and you come and meet us and say, we signed an NDA. I used your idea. It's not that clear cut. Um, Easy to prove, right? Because, like I said, most of the time they are not always copy and paste. And because you are discussing it with me, doesn't mean it's original, right? Doesn't mean it's original. It is not. You don't have a monopoly to that idea. So most of the time, I think as fintechs, right, we need to be able to just these things will always happen, and then it is most of the time it is outside legal processes that they find ways to align. The Paystack Zabbix situation, for example, is the one by both of them are bringing out. One is an app already that is going to be doing transfer. The other one is a cryptocurrency exchange, but the service is all about transferring money, right? There's a company name itself, Zap Africa. Why this one is a brand name, Zap, that they put on the app called Zap. And the guys feel that because you've named your app Zap, my company name is Zap Africa, you can be able to you are infringing on my registered trademark, whether or not I registered it in the particular category that you're trying to lay claim to. It's just a very interesting what they call it situation to say, look, if you have the resources as a fintech, especially the small ones for trademarking, if you have that resource, do as much as you can to get it done. If you don't have the resource or whatever you want to do, especially for the brand related assets, make it as public as quick as possible. Because when it comes to that whole proof thing, most of the things that happen under personal conversations or direct engagement with organizations are more difficult to prove. But when you already have like something that is in the public domain that you can easily track, put a timestamp on, right, in a public domain, those ones are a lot more easier for you to use as a proof, right? When you already associated yourself with that thing. But when it comes to the things that are silent, right, and you're passing it just between yourself and another third party, those ones are a little bit much more trickier to prove, and you might not have the resources to do the legal work. That is actually most of the situation that I was in sometimes. You wouldn't have the resources to draw out the legal process. So you must come to the table and find an out of court situation, because those court processes can be long and they can be very expensive.
All right. Mr. George, are you done?
This. So I mean, just to give some of my experience around these IP issues, really.
All right. Thank you, Mr. George. Okay, thank you, Mr. George, for your shared knowledge. I hope, Itana, your questions were answered by our mentors. Right. Okay. I can see we are almost out of time for today's class. So please, for the mentees that are in session, please, if you can we just kindly try to take our pictures now so that we can just draw the curtain on today's session. So please, if you don't mind, we'd like for you to turn on your videos. Thank you, Vanessa. Please, can we have more mentees turn on their videos so that we can take a quick picture? Thank you, Vanessa. Do we have more mentees in class? Thank you, Mr. Damilola. Thank you, Ikina. All right, that is done. Yeah, we're done with that. Thank you, everyone. I'm sure you guys have learned so much in today's class. The discussions have been ongoing from week one, very, very interesting from week one and down to week five. The dynamics of classes from henceforth will be changing. The information about that will be sent to you guys in your main group, or in the main group rather. Thank you, a big thank you to the mentors, Mr. Max and Mr. George, for their shared knowledge in class today. We look forward to hearing from them subsequently as time keeps going, and then we have subsequent sessions or subsequent mentorship programs where we get to share newer insights with our mentees. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this class. It has been an interesting journey so far. We look forward to seeing you all in the next class. Please, like I said, pay attention to all the informations that will be shared in your group or in the group this week, between this week and early next week. With that, we come to the end of today's class. Don't forget to share what you've learned on the different social media platforms. Also do well to tag our mentors, and do not forget to register for the um, the crypto the crypto class if you have not. Right, please do well to register for that. Thank you once again. Do enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and bye bye.